Welcome to your weekly crash class. I'm Nick.
And I'm Immanuel. Today we're talking about racial segregation.
Today's topics will include what racial segregation is,
What it can cause,
why and where it occurs,
and examples of it. Segregation is the act by which a person separates other people on the basis of one's grounds without a reasonable justification.
Segregation can come in many forms, like drinking from different water fountains, segregated schools, different job opportunities, or even using different bathrooms.
Segregation can cause white flight, ghettoization, and so much more. White flight is the movement of Caucasian city dwellers to the suburban area to escape minority influx.
This is connected with segregation because Caucasians would live next to other Caucasians and away from African Americans. Also, since African American facilities were separated away from white facilities, Caucasians wanted to live closer to the schools, stores, and etc.
Ghettoization is a process occurring in many inner cities in which they become dilapidated centers of poverty. As Caucasians move out to the suburbs and immigrants and people of color move in for scarce jobs and resources.
Ghetto is a term with a long history, originally referring to Jewish enclaves within European cities, which were physically separated from surrounding areas, but whose economic institutions often played an important role in life in the greater city. Segregation occurred in many other countries in the world also.
Yeah, like
Egypt or South Africa.
Yeah, but the one we're all familiar with was right here in the United States, between the Caucasians and the African Americans.
This took place after the Civil Rights era between the 1950s and the 1960s. Even though slavery was abolished, many Caucasians still treat African Americans as lower class citizens because of Jim Crow laws.
The Jim Crow laws were racial segregated state and local laws enacted after the Reconstruction period in the southern United States that continued in force until 1965, mandating the racial segregation in all public facilities, starting in 1890 with a separate but equal doctrine that formed the basis for state-sanctioned discrimination.
Moving on to another example, the apartheid in South Africa.
The apartheid separated the non-white South African citizens from the white citizens.
Apartheid was a system of racial segregation in South Africa enforced through legislation by the National Party. The National Party was the governing party from 1948 to 1994.
The cause of this is the racial segregation and white supremacy that have become a central aspect of both South African policy long before apartheid began. The controversial 1913 Land Act, passed 3 years after South Africa gained its independence, marked the beginning of territorial segregation by forcing black Africans to live in reserves.
The apartheid system in South Africa was ended through a system of negotiations between 1990 and 1993 and through the steps by the de Klerk's government.
The negotiations took place between the governing National Party, the African National Congress, and a wide variety of other political organizations. The most prominent person in this situation was Nelson Mandela.
He fought for the rights for the non-white citizens of South Africa since the apartheid. After 27 years he was in prison, Nelson Mandela was free in 1990 and fought for the end of apartheid in South Africa.
In conclusion, racial segregation was a disappointment all around the world.
Even though it is still present today, many organizations have helped equality for all. And that's racial segregation!